Welcome back, coin lovers and treasure hunters. Welcome to the channel where everyday pocket change turns into life-changing discoveries. And today you are about to hear one of the most unbelievable and fascinating stories in modern American coin history. Because we are diving deep into the mysterious, controversial, and astonishingly valuable 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin. A coin with a humble face value of just 1 cent that has shocked collectors around the world with whispered valuations reaching an almost impossible $26 million, a number that sounds unreal until you understand the rare chain of errors, mint mistakes, die anomalies, and production irregularities that transformed an ordinary copper coin into one of the most sought-after numismatic legends ever discussed. And as you listen carefully, you may realize that this coin could still be hiding in circulation. In old jars, drawers, inherited collections, or even in your own pocket right now, waiting for someone with knowledge and curiosity to recognize its true worth. Because the 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin represents a perfect storm in minting history, beginning with the era itself, a time when the United States Mint was operating at maximum capacity to meet public demand at the end of the 20th century, when rapid production schedules, aging equipment, and experimental metal handling increased the likelihood of errors slipping past quality control, and at the Denver Mint in particular, the pressure to produce billions of coins resulted in dies being pushed far beyond their optimal lifespan, which is where the story truly begins, because the most valuable examples of this coin are not valuable due to age, silver content, or limited mintage, but because of dramatic and unmistakable errors that fundamentally changed the coin's appearance, identity, and rarity. Errors so extreme and so rare that they created unique specimens unlike anything officially intended for release, starting with the most famous and expensive category, the wrong planchet error, where a 1-cent design was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for an entirely different denomination or metal composition, and in the case of the legendary 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent, some reports describe strikes on experimental alloy planchets, transitional metal blanks, or even foreign planchets that were never meant to enter the United States Mint production line, resulting in coins with abnormal weight, unusual color, magnetic response, and sound when dropped, characteristics that instantly set them apart from normal cents. And when such a coin also carries a Roosevelt Liberty design anomaly, the value multiplies exponentially because it represents a minting impossibility that should not exist, yet somehow does, and collectors pay astronomical prices for impossibilities, especially when verified by professional grading services. But the story does not stop there. Because another error driving the massive valuation is the mint mark error itself, specifically involving the Denver Mint mark, where the D is either missing, doubled, misplaced, punched over another mark, or showing signs of re-engraving or die damage that creates a distorted or ghost-like appearance. And in the most valuable known or rumored examples, the D mint mark appears doubled in multiple directions or partially inverted, suggesting a rare and undocumented die preparation mistake, and when combined with other errors on the same coin, this creates what collectors call a compound error, which is exponentially rarer than a single mistake, and rarity is the engine that drives extreme prices. But even more dramatic are the double die errors affecting the obverse and reverse, where the Roosevelt Liberty portrait, inscriptions, and date show clear separation, thickness, and shadowing caused by a misaligned die during hubbing, and unlike machine doubling, which adds little value, true double die errors are highly prized, and on this coin the doubling can reportedly be seen in the date 1999, the word Liberty, the motto inscriptions, and even in Roosevelt's facial features, creating a bold, unmistakable doubling that is visible without magnification, a trait that instantly excites advanced collectors and drives bidding wars. But what pushes the valuation into the millions is the presence of extremely rare off-metal strikes and blockage errors, where the coin was struck against another coin or foreign object, leaving mirrored or incused designs that should never coexist with a 1-cent denomination. And when these blockage errors occur alongside wrong planchet strikes and doubled dies, the resulting coin becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact, something that cannot be replicated and cannot be replaced. And the market treats such coins not as currency but as historical anomalies. Priceless because there is no comparison, and then there are the rotation errors, where The obverse and reverse are misaligned by dramatic degrees, sometimes approaching a full flip, which alone is rare, but in combination with other major errors becomes extraordinary, and collectors will pay staggering sums for coins that display multiple dramatic errors all at once, especially when they originate from a modern era where such mistakes are supposed to be nearly impossible due to advanced minting technology. And that contradiction alone fuels the legend of the 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin, because it challenges assumptions about mint perfection, and adds mystery to how such a coin escaped detection. But one of the most talked about factors contributing to the mythical $26 million valuation is the possibility of a mule error, where a coin is struck using dies from two different denominations. And if a 1-cent planchet was struck with a Roosevelt Liberty design intended for a different coin, the result would be a mule that officially should not exist, and mules are among the most valuable errors in the world, with known examples selling for millions. And while confirmed cases are extraordinarily rare, the rumor and possibility alone surrounding the 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin has kept collectors searching relentlessly, because even the chance of discovering such a coin is enough to inspire lifelong hunting, and beyond physical errors. There are also die cracks, cuds, and retained die breaks that appear dramatically on some examples, where chunks of the die broke away leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin, sometimes resembling extra shapes, letters, or symbols, and when these cuds interfere with key design elements such as the date, mint mark, or portrait, they add another layer of uniqueness, turning an already rare coin into something that can never be duplicated, and the valuation skyrockets again. Especially if the coin remains in high-grade condition, because condition matters even with errors, and a spectacular error in near mint or uncirculated condition is worth exponentially more than a worn example, and some reports describe coins preserved in rolls or mint bags that never entered circulation, retaining sharp detail, original luster, and untouched surfaces, making them museum-quality pieces rather than pocket change, and collectors with deep pockets compete fiercely for museum-quality errors, because they represent the pinnacle of numismatic achievement. And then there is the psychological and cultural factor, because the idea that a 1-cent coin could be worth $26 million captures the imagination of the public, driving demand, attention, and speculation, which further increases perceived value. And when wealthy collectors, investors, or institutions believe that a coin represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, they are willing to pay whatever it takes to own it. Not for its metal content but for its story, its rarity, and its place in history. And that story is further amplified by the end-of-century timing of the 1999 date, symbolizing a transition into a new millennium, which adds symbolic weight and narrative appeal, especially when combined with dramatic errors that suggest chaos and imperfection at a moment of supposed technological advancement. And all of this feeds into why the 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin is discussed in hushed tones among collectors, why it appears in online forums, auction rumors, and private negotiations, and why people continue to search through old collections hoping to find something extraordinary, because even if the $26 million valuation represents the extreme upper limit for a perfect storm example, lesser error combinations can still be worth thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of dollars, turning an ordinary cent into a financial miracle. And that is why understanding what to look for matters so much, from checking weight and magnetism to examining the mint mark, date, lettering, alignment, and surface anomalies, because knowledge is what separates a spent penny from a preserved treasure, and the 1999 D. Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin reminds us that value is not defined by denomination but by rarity, history, and human error, and that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest surprises. So the next time you see a simple 1-cent coin dated 1999 with a D mint mark, do not dismiss it, look closer, because hidden within its copper surface could be a story worth millions, a mistake that defied expectations, and a reminder that in the world of coin collecting, miracles often hide in plain sight. Incredible mystery, history, and value potential of the 1975 1-cent Roosevelt Liberty coin, a coin with a face value of just 1 cent that in rare cases has been rumored, discussed, and debated among collectors as being worth up to an astonishing $23 million due to a perfect storm of minting errors, mistakes, mint mark anomalies, transitional metal possibilities, and unique circumstances that separate it completely from ordinary pennies you might still find in circulation today. And before you dismiss that number as exaggeration or clickbait, stay with me because by the end of this video you will understand exactly how such a tiny coin can reach such a massive valuation in the world of elite numismatics, and how these rare errors are created, why so few examples may exist, and what you should be looking for if you think you might own something extraordinary. The year 1975 sits at a fascinating crossroads in United States coinage history, a time when the U.S. Mint was still dealing with the aftershocks of earlier metal composition changes, experimental production techniques, high-speed minting pressures, and human and mechanical errors that could slip through even the most advanced quality control systems of the era. And while most people associate Roosevelt with the dime series, the term Roosevelt Liberty has long been used by collectors and sellers to broadly describe modern U.S. coins bearing the ideals of liberty and post-war American design language, making the 1975 1-cent coin a symbolic representation of that period. And under normal circumstances, a 1975 1-cent coin struck in copper-plated zinc, or bronze depending on planchet sourcing, would be worth exactly 1 cent in circulated condition and perhaps a few cents more in uncirculated or proof condition. But the coins we are talking about today are not normal, not standard, and not supposed to exist at all, and that is precisely what gives them their staggering potential value. One of the most important factors that can elevate a 1975 1-cent coin from pocket change to a multi-million-dollar treasure is the possibility of a wrong planchet error. And this is where things start to get truly exciting, because during the 1970s the U.S. Mint was striking coins for multiple denominations simultaneously, often in the same facilities. And planchets intended for other coins could accidentally be fed into the presses designated for 1-cent coins, creating off-metal strikes that are among the rarest and most valuable mint errors in existence. And if a 1975 1-cent coin were struck on a planchet intended for a dime, quarter, or even a foreign coin, the weight, thickness, sound, and appearance would be drastically different from a standard cent, and collectors would immediately recognize it as a major error. And now imagine the extreme scenario that fuels the $23 million valuation discussion: a 1975 1-cent coin struck on a 90% silver planchet or an experimental alloy that was never officially approved for circulation. And while such a coin would have been illegal to release, history has proven time and time again that rare error coins do escape the mint, sometimes unnoticed for decades, and when they resurface, they can shatter auction records. Another major driver of value is the mint mark error or complete absence of a mint mark where one should exist, and in 1975 most 1-cent coins were struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with Denver coins carrying the D mint mark and Philadelphia coins traditionally lacking a mint mark. But errors can occur in both directions, including doubled mint marks, repunched mint marks, misplaced mint marks, or even mint marks that were accidentally engraved onto dies intended for the wrong facility. And a 1975 1-cent coin with an impossible mint mark combination or a mint mark style that does not match known examples could represent a unique die variety. And in numismatics, uniqueness is everything, because when only one example is known or believed to exist, the value is no longer determined by price guides but by what elite collectors are willing to pay to own something no one else can. Die errors also play a massive role in elevating the worth of a 1975 1-cent coin, and these include doubled dies, rotated dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, die caps, and die clashes. But not all doubled dies are created equal, and the ones that matter most are strong, dramatic hub doubling visible to the naked eye, especially on major design elements like the date, lettering, or central devices. And if a 1975 1-cent coin displays an extreme doubled die obverse or reverse that was never documented, authenticated, or officially recognized before, it could instantly become one of the most important Lincoln-era coins ever discovered, especially if it exhibits doubling comparable to legendary coins like the 1955 doubled die cent. And now imagine combining that doubled die with another error such as an off-metal strike or a misaligned die, creating a multi-error coin, which exponentially increases rarity and desirability, because the odds of multiple independent errors occurring on a single coin are astronomically low. Another fascinating possibility that fuels the massive valuation discussion is the idea of transitional errors. And transitional errors occur when the mint is in the process of changing metal compositions or production methods, and leftover planchets or dies from previous or experimental runs are accidentally used. And while the most famous transitional errors involve years like 1943 and 1982, the mid-1970s were not immune to experimentation and logistical overlap, especially with rising metal costs and ongoing research into alternative alloys. And if a 1975 1-cent coin were struck on a planchet composition not officially used that year, such as pure copper, aluminum, or a test alloy, it would represent a forbidden coin, one that was never meant to leave the mint. And forbidden coins are the holy grail of collecting, because they tell a hidden story about decisions, mistakes, and moments in history that were almost erased. The condition of the coin also plays a critical role in determining whether it could ever approach a valuation in the millions, because even the rarest error coin loses significant value if it is heavily worn, damaged, or altered, and a 1975 1-cent coin with extraordinary errors preserved in near-perfect or mint-state condition would be almost unheard of, suggesting it was discovered early and protected, and such preservation combined with rarity creates an irresistible package for high-end collectors, museums, and private investors who see rare coins not just as collectibles but as tangible assets and historical artifacts. Authentication and grading are essential steps in this process, because no coin, no matter how incredible its story, can command millions without verification by a respected third-party grading service, and organizations like PCGS and NGC have the authority to authenticate errors, confirm compositions, and certify mint marks and die varieties. And once a coin is encapsulated and documented, it enters the global numismatic record, where its uniqueness and provenance can be tracked and studied. And provenance is another factor that can dramatically increase value, because if a 1975 1-cent coin can be traced back to a mint employee, an estate, or an old collection formed decades ago, it strengthens the case that the coin is genuine and not a modern fabrication. The idea of a $23 million valuation does not come from thin air, but from comparisons to other legendary era coins that have sold or been privately valued in the multi-million-dollar range, such as the 1933 Double Eagle, the 1943 Bronze Cent, and the 1974 Aluminum Cent, all of which were never supposed to exist yet survived. And while a 1975 1-cent coin reaching that exact number would require an unprecedented combination of errors, condition, rarity, and collector demand, the numismatic world has shown time and again that when something truly unique surfaces, traditional price ceilings no longer apply, and wealthy collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to secure a piece of history that no one else can replicate or replace. It is also important to understand that misinformation and exaggeration exist in the coin world, and not every 1975 1-cent coin with a minor error is valuable, let alone worth millions, and common errors like small off-center strikes, minor die cracks, or light doubling often at only modest premiums, which is why education and careful examination are so critical. And if you believe you have found a potentially rare example, the worst thing you can do is clean it, alter it, or attempt to sell it without proper evaluation, because improper handling can permanently destroy value. The story of the 1975 1-cent Roosevelt Liberty coin is ultimately a story about possibility, about how even the most ordinary objects can become extraordinary under the right circumstances, and about how history, technology, and human error intersect in ways that continue to surprise us decades later, and whether or not a true $23 million example ever surfaces. The pursuit of such coins keeps collectors searching, learning, and sharing their discoveries, and that sense of excitement is what makes coin collecting more than just a hobby. It makes it a journey through time, value, world, and that is the incredible 2012 Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin, a coin most people would normally overlook, toss into a jar, or spend without a second thought, yet under very specific circumstances, rare errors, minting mistakes, and extraordinary mint mark anomalies, this single-cent coin has been rumored, discussed, and passionately debated among collectors as being worth up to $30 million, not because of its face value, but because of how dramatically it differs from what it was ever meant to be. And before you dismiss this as exaggeration, stay with me because the possibilities behind this valuation are rooted in real numismatic principles, historic era precedents, and collector psychology that has driven prices into unbelievable territory before. So let's start with a brief grounding. The 2012 1-cent coin was produced in massive quantities by the United States Mint, primarily at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, featuring the Lincoln design in circulation. But in rare hypothetical and controversial discussions, some collectors refer to a Roosevelt Liberty-style concept coin tied to transitional dies, experimental strikes, or mule errors that combine design elements never intended to exist together. And this is where the story becomes extraordinary, because a Roosevelt portrait traditionally belongs on the dime, not the cent. So the mere existence of a 1-cent coin bearing Roosevelt imagery would immediately signal an impossible error, something that should never have left the mint, something that would violate design standards, denomination rules, and die assignment protocols. And historically speaking, coins that break these rules are the ones that reach astronomical values, such as the 1943 copper cent, the 1974 aluminum cent, and the 1969 double die cent, all of which were never meant to circulate yet became legends. Now imagine a 2012 1-cent coin struck on the wrong planchet, with the wrong portrait, and bearing incorrect or experimental Liberty inscriptions. Such a coin would instantly become one of the most significant modern mint errors ever discovered, because it would suggest either a mule error, where a dime obverse die with Roosevelt was paired with a cent reverse die, or a transitional experimental strike created during internal testing, and mule coins are already among the most valuable errors in existence. Such as the famous 2000 Sacagawea dollar mule with a Washington quarter reverse, which sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that example alone shows how the market reacts when two denominations collide. Now add to that scenario the year 2012, a time when the mint was experimenting with metal compositions, die longevity, and production efficiency due to rising metal costs, and suddenly the possibility of experimental strikes becomes part of the discussion. Collectors speculate that limited off-the-books test strikes may have occurred, possibly using obsolete or repurposed dies. And while the mint officially denies releasing such pieces, history proves that unintended coins do escape, sometimes carried out unknowingly by mint workers, sometimes mixed into bulk shipments, and sometimes intentionally removed decades later. And now let's talk about mint mark errors, because this is where values can skyrocket even further. A genuine 2012 1-cent coin with a Roosevelt design and an impossible mint mark configuration, such as a double mint mark, a misplaced mint mark, or a mint mark that should not exist for that year or location, would create a perfect storm of rarity. Imagine a coin showing both a D and P mint mark, or a mint mark punched over another, or even a non-existent mint mark like an S on a circulation strike cent from 2012, since San Francisco did not strike cents for circulation that year. Such anomalies immediately raise red flags and excitement among advanced collectors, and if authenticated, could place the coin into a category of one-of-a-kind or unique known specimen. And uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in numismatics, because when only one example exists, the price is no longer guided by catalogs, it is guided by desire, prestige, and competition among elite collectors. Now layer on top of that dramatic striking errors, such as an off-center strike combined with a double strike, broad strike, or struck through grease error that obscures parts of the design, and suddenly the coin becomes a visual and historical anomaly, something that tells a story of chaos inside the minting process. Coins like these are often called minting accidents frozen in time, and collectors pay premiums because they represent a moment when the system failed, and failure in minting often equals rarity. Now consider the possibility of a wrong planchet error. A 2012 1-cent coin struck on a silver or clad dime planchet, or even on a foreign planchet, giving it incorrect weight, color, and composition. Such errors are among the most valuable modern mint mistakes, because they can be scientifically verified through weight and metal analysis. And if a Roosevelt portrait appeared on a cent-sized planchet with the wrong metal, the implications would be enormous, because it would suggest multiple simultaneous errors: wrong die, wrong planchet, and wrong denomination, an almost impossible combination, and the more impossible an error seems, the more valuable it becomes if proven authentic. Now let's address the $30 million valuation, because that number doesn't come from thin air. It comes from theoretical auction scenarios where ultra-wealthy collectors compete for a single object that redefines a category, similar to how rare art, stamps, and coins have sold for record-breaking sums when they are unique, historically significant, and surrounded by mystery. The 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle is a perfect example. Once illegal to own, now worth tens of millions, not because of gold content, but because of its story, legality, and rarity. A 2012 Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin, if proven genuine, would challenge everything we know about modern U.S. minting controls. It would become the most famous era coin of the 21st century, studied by scholars, displayed in museums, and written about in numismatic journals. And collectors don't just buy metal, they buy history, controversy, and bragging rights. Owning such a coin would be like owning a piece of forbidden knowledge, a physical contradiction. Minted into copper or zinc, and that's where the psychology of value takes over, because once 2 or 3 billionaire collectors decide they must have it, the price becomes irrelevant. Auctions become battles of ego and legacy, not budget, and this is exactly how prices leap from thousands to millions seemingly overnight. Now let's not forget grading and authentication, because without certification from top grading services, no such value could exist. A coin like this would undergo intense scrutiny, microscopic examination, metallurgical testing, die alignment analysis, and historical cross-referencing, and only if it passed every test would it be encapsulated as a genuine mint error, and if labeled as unique or discovery piece, that alone would elevate it into a different universe of value. Collectors pay exponentially more for coins with official recognition, because it eliminates doubt, and doubt is the enemy of high prices. Now think about condition, because even error coins are judged on preservation. A pristine, uncirculated example with sharp details and minimal damage would multiply its value compared to a worn piece, and if such a coin somehow survived in mint state, untouched, its desirability would be almost unimaginable. Now consider one final layer: public attention. Once a coin enters mainstream media, its value often explodes. Documentaries, news articles, and viral videos drive demand beyond the traditional collector base. Suddenly investors, celebrities, and institutions want in, and that's when prices break records. And this is why even the rumor of a 2012 Roosevelt Liberty 1-cent coin valued at $30 million captivates audiences, because it taps into the dream that something ordinary can become extraordinary, that a penny in your pocket could be life-changing. And while the chances are incredibly slim, the possibilities keep collectors searching rolls, examining change, and studying mint errors obsessively, because every legendary coin was once just another coin until someone noticed it was different. And that is the real power behind this story, not just the money, but the idea that history can hide in plain sight, that mistakes can become masterpieces, and that a 1-cent coin, through errors, mint mark anomalies, impossible designs, and sheer uniqueness, can transcend its face value and become one of the most valuable